Awesome. Thank you, Vivek. That was great. And next up, we are going to welcome Dave Kuhar to the stage. Everyone give him a round of applause. And he's going to talk about ditching the batch scripts. Yeah, all about bots. The clicker is right there. There you go.
Beautiful. Right. I'm assuming it's the big green button. All right, hi everybody. As you said, I'm Dave Kuhar. I'm an onboarding architect here at Files.com. And today we're going to talk about a topic that is close to home for a lot of you, and that is batch scripts, the batch jobs, the shell scripts, the cron tasks, and folder watching hacks that are supposed to save time, but they lurk silently in the background, and they're duct taping our workflows together. We're going to look at why scripted workflows break down, what automation really looks like today, and how you can move from fragile file transfers to scalable, reliable, no-code solutions. You heard a little bit about that from Vivek. I'm going to dig into that a lot deeper now. All these topics tie back to a simple idea. You can't really build modern workflows using yesterday's tools. So whether you're syncing folders with partners or routing inbound files from other systems or what have you, automation gives you control, visibility, and peace of mind. So I want to start off by saying, I don't want to alarm anyone, but when kids these days say, the 1900s, they're not talking about the Industrial Revolution, they're talking about 1997. They're talking Windows 95 and ICQ, and if you remember your aim away message, then like me, congratulations, you're ancient. No, they're talking about this guy. His name is Cornelius Patchwhistle, and he's an old-timey developer hammering away at a clacky keyboard in front of what looks like a TV screen. And if he wanted a file to transfer at night, he had to pray to the ASCII gods and blow smoke up through his chimney or whatever. And if you wanted a file transferred at midnight, that's just the way it was. It may as well have been the age of the telegraph. But here's the thing, there's a lesson in Cornelius. Again, don't use yesterday's tools to build modern workflows. Of course, Cornelius eventually retired and left behind things like, hello, help, I'm stuck. There we go. There you go. Batch scripts like this, all right? Does this look familiar? Does this story sound familiar? It's 2:03 in the morning. Your phone is blowing up, and you found out that this masterpiece, has broken again. This is a Cornelius Patchwhistle creation, written right before he retired, and while he was a true pioneer of batch logic, no one's touched it since, and it's fragile as glass. Logging, if it even exists, is on a .log file on some dusty hard drive that nobody has access to. Your team is babysitting it like a newborn. And of course, after everything has been fixed, there's the two sacred postmortem questions. Who wrote this and what was wrong with them? So it works, but only if Steve runs it from his 2013 laptop while facing magnetic north. It's not pretty. And so you start thinking there's got to be a better way to handle this. And which way am I supposed to point this thing? To you? There you go. Oh, there you go. Poor Cornelius. He did his best with what he had way back in, the 1900s. But you're right, there is a better way. Welcome to the age of automation. There we go. All right, so now I'm not here to throw shade at scripts. They had their day, but we need things that don't break at 2 a.m. Well, automation, we replace fragile code with no-code logic. We can schedule file transfers, trigger events when files arrive, route them automatically, notify systems and staff, and apply security policies all in one platform. No more praying to the ASCII gods, and poor Cornelius, he can stay retired. All right, we're going to play a little game I like to call use case bingo. It's a handy little exercise to assess your need for modern processes. You might need automation if any of these are true, like this daily SFTP transfer. It's been running longer than some interns have even been alive. Someone edited the batch script and now it's haunted, which is truly terrifying in the middle of the night. You have a transfer that ran on local time instead of UTC because time zones are nature's cruelest joke. You don't have an auto delete policy, which you really should have because file hoarding is a real thing. And finally, there's no way to limit file types. And that's really good because there's nothing says, professional workflow like mixing 4K drone footage with, your quarterly reports or whatever. If you mentally checked any of those, you qualify for automation therapy. Side effects may include reduced stress, better sleep, and the strange desire to automate everything. So first, here's what you do. Identify the repetitive workflow that's eating up your team's time and that you really need to replace with something better. Next, choose the right tool for the job. It could be a sync, an automation, a folder behavior, or some combination. Then we layer in some logic, security, timing, things like file type rules and destination routing, access control and retention. And finally, we just let it run. You get your time back, and your team gets to sleep, and of course, Cornelius gets to stay retired. So, you've got your automation up and running, but now you wanted to make it smart. So it's time to mix in a few more tools, like auto renaming, because budget underscore final underscore version underscore v3.xlsx is not a naming convention, it's a cry for help. All right, so GPG encryption built in, no external tools, no sketchy command line gymnastics, just secure files right out of the box. Retention rules, so you can say goodbye to that mystery archive folder. It's kind of like the junk drawer everybody has at home. It hasn't been opened since 2014, nobody knows what's in it. Emailing to your inbox, so your partners can send files right to you by clicking send. It shows right up in the folder where it needs to be. It's trackable, it's auditable, it's traceable, it's reliable. And then finally, webhooks. You want to trigger an alert, kick off another system, notify your team in Slack. You could do that as well. So, we're often asked, what's the difference between a sync and an automation? Why have both? Which one do I pick? So I like to explain it as a sync being a conveyor belt. You have a single point of origin, you have a single destination, and you need to move things reliably from A to B on a schedule or based on an event, and this is your go-to. Using syncs is the perfect way to do this. They're precise, they're predictable, they're perfect for scheduled transfers, and then I think of automations more like a maestro. They're directing the whole thing. There you go, there's the maestro. All right, so every trigger, every route, every rule is a node in his score, and this is how he manages to do multiple things at once within one single workflow. Again, all with no code. It's not brute force. It's elegance, it's logic, it's timing, it's maestro level. So we'll go back to syncs for a second, talk about that conveyor belt. Kind of like the conveyor belt at the airport. If it was reliable, never lost your luggage, and had a retry button, that's the kind of conveyor belt we're talking about here. With syncs, you have a clear point of origin, a specific destination in mind. You can go one way or two way, and you can set it to run a schedule or trigger it externally. And because we know life happens, connections drop and clouds drift, syncs are built to handle interruptions gracefully. They retry, they recover. They have that logic built in, and you don't have to worry about tracking it and making sure that it happens. They're intelligent. You can include or exclude based on file naming patterns. You can have it clean up after itself, delete the files after they've been moved, even emptying or deleting empty folders after the sync is done. So it's perfect for keeping files.com talking nicely to FTP servers, SharePoint drives, Amazon S3, whatever it is. It's the perfect way to move these files around, again, without having to rely on those creaky scripts. Okay, so I'm going to talk real quick about setting these up. What you do is you start off by choosing, your local folder, telling what I'm going to do, my remote folder, the folder I'm going to send, or remote server, remote folder. Decide whether you're going to push or pull, whether it could be two-way, whether you're going to delete a source files from the site, keep a copy, or delete the empty folders, all right there on one screen. Okay, sync triggers. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, like automatic intervals. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 16,000 minutes, whatever you need, however often you need it to run. Okay, sync triggers. So you can say at the end of the day, end of the week, end of the month, even end of the quarter, what have you. Okay, a recurring day of the month. You need to run a report or you need to push it over from one place to another on the 15th. You can just choose the 15th of the month that way. And finally, external triggers. Basically, that's using an automation. A file event happens, an automation goes and automatically triggers the sync to run. Okay, here's the include and exclude patterns. You can use blobs in here. So I want to include just the files in these two folders on this remote and I want to avoid, I don't really need PDFs, doc, and docx files, so I'm going to exclude those. You can be very clean about what you're moving rather than having everything show up all in the same place. All right, so the automation overture. Sure, if syncs are the conveyor belts, again, steady, structured, reliable, automations are the maestros. They don't just move files, they respond, they listen for events, they take action when it matters, and manage the flow across your entire environment. So picture this, a file uploads, an automation kicks off, renames the file, routes it to a destination folder where it's PGP encrypted, and then notifies your app via webhook. That's a pretty complex script to write, but you can manage it all here on our platform just by building the flow in the right order. Unlike syncs, automations are one way, but they're highly dynamic. They can branch, they can route, they can transform file names, they can coordinate complex workflows across folders and systems. And they actually do include retry logic. So if there's an issue with the destination, we can have the automation try over again until it actually works the way you want it to, because you never know it's going to trip up at some end. And so a lot of teams, this is what they're still living with, right? We want to fix that, and we're going to move them to this right here. So these are the same file types, the same destinations, but now everything is routed through automations and syncs to files.com. Files are picked up over here. They're either run on automation, they're synced, they move to the right places. Maybe they're encrypted and they're stored on files. Maybe they end up on SharePoint or on your on-prem server using the files.com agent. Really what's nice about that is everything's logged, everything is tracked, and everything is auditable. So if you have to respond to a compliance audit or what have you, you can show everything as it happened and when it happened. And so here's a real world example we worked on. And yes, it did look a lot like that. They had a patchwork of PowerShell scripts. Window task scheduler was set up by different people at different times with different ideas of what success meant. And sometimes an alert would show up, sometimes I wouldn't. It really depended on how it was set up, whether you knew the right log to look at or whether you bothered looking at the log at all. And if the file didn't show up when it was supposed to, the ancient ritual would begin. Who touched it? It wasn't me. Did IT change the firewall? Where's Steve's laptop? All of those things happen, and we want to make that stop happening. So we decided that Cornelius and his scripts deserved a retirement party. We replaced 8 batch jobs with free files.com automations and a sync. While we were at it, we added some GPG encryption for the payroll information. We sent upload notifications to the proper teams via Slack. You could also do it via email. And we routed files to different folders based on file name conventions. We got all that done in a couple of 1-hour meetings, I think. So we replaced a whole lot of stuff in a very short time. Here's another example of how we simplify workflows. Let's say that Division A over here uses Dropbox and Division B uses Box. And it really could be any 2 remote servers. It's just for this explanation, I had those 2 set up in my test account. But it doesn't really matter what the remotes are. Let's say on a weekly basis, Division B needs to receive files from Division A. And you might think that if I'm going to replace these 2 scripts, I'm going to have to set up 2 syncs. You don't really need to do that. We have the flexibility with automations to send from remote to remote without having to go through an interstitial step of storing the stuff with files.com. So what I did is I set up a copy, that is not what I wanted to do. There we go. Copy from remote to remote directly. I set up the interval for weekly. I chose a remote server instead of this site, my demo Dropbox account, and here's files from Division A. For the destination, a different remote server, my Box account, and files from Division A. With exception handling, I told it that it can try, every hour, try 5 more times in case something hiccups at the Dropbox end or the Box end. And finally, I have a review here. I can read through the whole thing and see that I've got everything set the way I wanted to, and just set it up, and off it goes, and it does this thing every week. Over the years, we learned some lessons from the automation trenches, and sometimes the hard way. So here's some best practices for you. Your automations will be a whole lot easier to build if you have logical folder structure. So, clean intake folders, processing folders, archive folders, everything has its function and you understand what it is before you start the work. So if you got a bit of a mess, there's a little cleanup to be done, but it's worth the effort. All right, use file naming conventions. One of the cool things you've heard is that we can rename files on the fly. So if you have a partner who's not really good at getting you the files named in a way that's meaningful, that makes sense, we can help show you how to set up a rename function that takes maybe the name of the folder and drops it to the beginning or end of the file name, files, time and date stamps or what have you, or just kind of change the whole file structure name or file name structure anytime you want. Test with some non-production files. Don't just throw your live payroll files, or your client's files, or your customer or your partner files into a new workflow and hope that it works. Do it when it's low stakes so you don't make any mistakes. And then finally, it could be tempting to build this giant Rube Goldberg machine like that old mousetrap game right up front because you got this great idea. It's a whole lot better idea to do it one step at a time, test, make sure it works, add the next step, test again, so that you don't find yourself doing some horrible things with files that you didn't intend to do. So the TLDR here is to, you don't need a mountain of bash scripts anymore. You don't need 12 different systems duct taped together. What you need is a better night's sleep, and your team needs to stop babysitting file jobs. Automation doesn't just make you faster, it makes your workflows cleaner, smarter, more secure, and actually supportable over time. That's what we're building, and that's what we're here to help you do too. And there we go. Thank you. Oh, can you go back? Thank you. There you go. All right, there you go. Let's build something cool. Thanks for taking the tour. You've seen what bad looks like. You see what good could look like. As you've heard already, you have opportunities to meet with some of us today. Reach out to us, our support team over time. We're always here to help build these things and help you leverage the tool to its best ability. Thank you. Yes? Questions?
I have a question about the sync setup.
Yeah.
When you utilize the sync setup and you say delete the file after it's transferred,
Yeah.
does that fall underneath your retention policy in case something happens and you have to call and have that file?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And actually, I want to thank you for mentioning calling to have files restored. Just in the last couple of weeks, Doctor, I don't remember what it was, but we added the ability for you to do your own restores now.
Oh,
yeah. So, all right. If you look in the left-hand menu, it's under
the data governance.
Under data governance. Yeah. Yeah. So yes, you can do your own restores. We essentially have a recycle bin now.
But that does fall underneath.
It does fall into that. Right. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Any other syncs or questions about syncs, automations, Cornelius, whatever?
Is there a methodology to set up how the files are? Is there a methodology for? We got upside down. Is there a methodology for using the files, naming the files and putting them in a different folder on the local server based on a table, or is it just through the wildcard?
Based on a table?
Yeah. So like the way we do ours right now is we have a table within our SQL.
Okay.
That when we look at the file, we match that up to a table in the SQL and say, okay, that's that property that goes there.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So that sounds like, well, first of all, not exactly the way you're describing it. So when the files come in, we can prepend or append certain strings. We have certain tokens you can prepend or append. If you play with it, you may be familiar. Mm-hmm. One of the strategies I've used in the past is to take you can take the folder name that the file is in, and that folder or the folders anywhere in that tree with a token, you can take part of that folder name and add it to the file name as well. But it sounds like, is yours reading the file to determine what it is before?
So like we'll have one company put all of their properties into one folder on files.com, but on our local server, each property has a separate folder. The file's in, looks at the first 3 digits of the file and says, okay, it goes into this folder.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if there's a way without having to go into the automation and say, well, this code goes to this folder, if we could use it through some kind of table reference, as opposed to having to create automations for each individual company, each individual property.
Yeah, okay. At this point, no, we don't do that. Maybe like Devakar, do you have feedback on that? Can we get his microphone?
Here.
Oh, okay.
Can you?
He was asking if as the files come into make sure I say this right. As files come in to a single folder, they are being distributed to separate. They're being moved into separate folders depending on who they came from, and is doing a lookup in a SQL database to decide how to route things. So you're using that. They're using a database to decide routing. So we're talking about like multiple branching based on looking up in a SQL table, right?
Or a table that we could create within files.com, a list that we could create.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. Go ahead, Devakar.
Yeah. So I think right now we don't do that. Yeah, but we'll explore that use case with you directly in one-on-one today.
It just stops from having to create all these different automation buttons.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll catch up with you on that.
Yeah. That's why we're here. We want to hear those ideas from you guys. All right. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hey, you
Hey,
mentioned file renaming, so I'm interested in knowing if you have OCR, because it might be beneficial for us to grab some detail from the file for the renaming.
We don't do OCR. We don't read into files yet. That's also, I think, somewhere on the roadmap, but product can answer that better than me. Again, with Devakar or Vivek, somebody like that. There, he's right there, yeah. Welcome, Vivek,
I was
back.
just having trouble understanding the actual question.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You guys able to hear me? Okay.
Right. Evan was asking about whether we can read into a file to gather some information to use that to rename the files. OCR.
You're talking about opening up the file and looking into the file.
Yeah, OCR.
Right, OCR. So at this point, no. We're going to talk about that in the roadmap. What we do want to do is we want to get into the area of examining the files and looking at the files and making sense of that, getting sentiments, and doing things like indexing, right? So those are not currently done yet. These are areas that we're going to talk about. So I think 11:30 is our roadmap strategic direction conversation. Right. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff. Wow. I've got feedback coming in. So yeah, keep that thought coming, but what I want to encourage you to do is specifically on that scenario, come talk to us about your use case. And there may be either current ways or other ways that we can go address that, but either way, we can take that input and figure that out in the roadmap, right? Oh, yeah, please.
Some libraries that are.
Yeah. So currently, those libraries. So the question here is the ability for me to use custom libraries that I already own or I source, and I have things that I can go achieve with that libraries. Can I plug that into your automations or your flows and what have you? And currently, the answer is no. But that's absolutely something we want to go at. So, for example, if you're on AWS. And you want to have a Lambda process that basically gets inserted into the flow. That's kind of the next wave of things that we want to go do for our automations and workflows. But keep those thoughts coming because yes, we are listening to you guys and we have some thoughts around how to go achieve that. Question? Yes, Brian.
Comes into we have a lot of EDI files that come into files.com. So the 850s, the 997s, 832s, and stuff like that. Is there a way, or do you have anything planned so that we can parse these files? We can have agreements with our customers that are sending those files that we can respond based on the files type that come in.
Right.
I'm going to take this mic from you. He's going to turn your lab on, and there will be.
Oh. Okay, sorry, I'm double mic'd. Appreciate that. So yeah, again, so Brian's question is looking at files that are coming in that might be different file formats and looking at the files to be able to then normalize them for the downstream systems that need to consume those files, right? Because you may be coming in from multiple different partners with different file formats or the data. Oh my gosh.
It was me.
Yeah, thank you. So essentially normalizing all of that stuff, and again, the answer is no. So let's do this. I think these are all great questions, but I think it would be great for having them at the roadmap and the strategy session. So currently the functionality is not there, but this is something that we absolutely want to add. I think the session's at 11:30 that we're going to go talk about that. So that will actually give you an idea of, for the next 12 to 18 months, we're not talking about 4 years, 5 years, we're talking about a short-term thing. Where are we going to put our investment dollars? And these ideas are actually on the slides already that we're going to talk about, but those are still at a high level. So that's the reason why we're here. We want to engage with you guys to talk about your use cases around that as well, to make sure that we incorporate that. But the answer is no, we don't have that capability right now. Okay. So yeah, I mean, just what we wanted to do is talk about what's on the truck today and get you guys educated and help you with best practices and such. But that session that we're going to have is actually more about tomorrow and the future. So absolutely encourage all this feedback. Cool.
Questions? Any other questions? Oh, great. All right.